President Franklin Roosevelt's secluded getaway revealed. Today, it's an obscure place on a small island named Campobello in New Brunswick, Canada. A century ago, this was a happening place for the rich and famous. This included the wealthy family of young Franklin. And after his marriage to Eleanor, their family spent summer after summer experiencing secluded Campobello Island. This island could only be accessed by boat. If you want to explore from your armchair or put an off-the-beaten-path place in your travel plans, come with me to this international park that holds lots of charm and abounds in history, where Franklin Roosevelt experienced happiness and glee, but in moments that all changed. A tragic event forever changed the life of Franklin Delano Roosevelt on a small island in Canada. Let's explore Roosevelt Campobello International Park. It's a place of reflection, history, beauty, and lunch. From glorious flower beds to the bedroom where FDR no doubt anguished, to the lovely shores of Friar, Passamaquoddy, and Cobscook Bays. Western bays of the greater, more famous Bay of Fundy. Travel across America and beyond to New Brunswick, Canada, with me. We took an exceedingly long and arduous drive from northern New Hampshire across Route 2 and various back roads to reach the Turnpike in Augusta, Maine. It is traditionally close to impossible to easily traverse Maine in an east-west orientation. The interstate toll road was the only high-speed part of a 6.5 hour one-way trip to Roosevelt Campobello International Park. Unable to locate a local coffee shop that was open, we had to resort to the New England standard of Dunkin' Donuts, now simply going by Dunkin'. A trip across down East Maine is time-consuming and at times monotonous. We will be taking a whirlwind trip to catch this international park, walk the streets of the easternmost town in the United States, go to a Maine state park to see the easternmost lighthouse and geographic point in the United States, eat a beyond delicious lobster roll, spend the night in a wooden tent, essentially. Finally, find a local flair coffee shop and spend part of a day at the way too busy Acadia National Park. Buy live lobster and make it back to camp for dinner to grill our ice-down sleeping lobster. Yes, we had a busy 2 days. In this video, I will focus on the spectacularly historic and lovely FDR Cottage and 2 traditional lighthouses on Campobello Island in New Brunswick, Canada. Be sure to subscribe and hit the notification bell to be alerted when I post new videos and our down east Maine part of this 36-hour excursion. Sparing you the 6.5 hour drive, I will take you straight to the FDR Memorial Bridge at Lubec, Maine. We will be exploring Lubec sites soon. Be sure to take your passport because you will be entering a province in the country of Canada and returning back to the United States, and proper documentation is required. Please know all the rules for traveling into Canada before proceeding to the Campobello port of entry. The main part of this international park is just a short distance from the border station. This is a seasonal park that is only open between May and October. Check the website for the exact opening and closing dates, should your plans fall in either of those months. The park comprises almost 1/3 of this island, and one could spend 2 days to take in all that it has to offer. We don't have 2 days. However, we will see the main parts, so sit back and relax, or take notes for your upcoming visit. You will likely want to make the visitor center your first stop to gain orientation. However, our bellies dictated that we find the Prince Cafe first. One other exceedingly important thing, New Brunswick is in the Atlantic time zone, so we just lost 1 hour. Don't be alarmed. Once we cross the bridge back to Maine, we will grab it back. But realize what time it is at the park so that you have plenty of time to see what all there is to offer. Passing the Roosevelt Cottage on the right, we followed the path to secure lunch. We chose to sit on the lovely veranda overlooking Passamaquoddy Bay. It was rather chilly, even though this was the middle of summer. The sky was also overcast, but I guess this was better than blistering hot. Lunch was very good, and as I mentioned, the cafe is in the Prince Cottage, which was built in the 19th century for Lawrence Prince. Prince was a cotton broker from St. Louis. We popped back into the visitor center to sign up for the next cottage tour. Fortunately, there was room for 3 more persons on the tour that was starting in less than 5 minutes. Now the park is free, and so is the tour. Partially retracing our steps, we veered right, passing the lovely flower gardens, and entered the side porch door to join the tour group. This is Franklin and Eleanor Roosevelt's summer cottage, and it has been preserved, and it is almost exactly as it was in 1920. The expert guides and interpreters take you to both floors of the memorabilia-filled cottage. These guided tours take place every 15 minutes, and they're limited to 20 persons. That's why you have to sign up at the visitor center. Young Franklin Roosevelt's parents were among those who summered at Campobello's hotels and who had purchased land and built a cottage. With his parents, he spent many enjoyable summers on this small Canadian island in the Bay of Fundy. His parents and later he and his wife Eleanor and their children were attracted to Campobello Island for the ample opportunities for outdoor recreation. As a young father, FDR found that his family enjoyed Campobello, and it became customary to spend July, August, and part of September there. Over the summers, the energetic, athletic father taught his children sailing and many other pastimes he had learned there during his childhood. Campobello became as much a part of their lives as it had been of his. And that is why this is such a special place, for this is where he was stricken, as they say, with polio. He had grown up here. He was an active, athletic man. He was the president of the United States. He was governor of New York. But his life changed here at Campobello. The cottage neighboring James and Sarah Roosevelt's cottage, those are FDR's parents, was owned by Mrs. Grace Kuhn, a family friend of the Roosevelts. And after Mrs. Kuhn died in 1908, Sarah Delano Roosevelt purchased the red summer home as a belated wedding gift for Franklin and Eleanor Roosevelt and their growing family. The tour was sort of hasty. I had done some research about what we would see in the cottage, and I'm glad that I did, for the tour guide did not include those things until I asked about them. There was one thing that I was waiting to see, and she did talk about Eleanor Roosevelt's oversized bullhorn. I won't tell you everything that the guide said, but for my armchair travelers and trucker friends, I certainly want to show you around and point out the highlights of the cottage tour. This first room was filled with games and sports equipment used by the Roosevelt family. All 7 of them loved this summer getaway. As we passed from room to room, the guide explained photographs, furniture, books, paintings, and items that were all original to the cabin. Most of what we saw was original or restored. Many times when you visit historic homes, few of the furnishings are original, but not here at this cottage. In this grand room, we saw several of the items I had looked forward to seeing. 2 of those included FDR's lucky pipe and hat that he reportedly took on the campaign trail. The family summered in what Franklin called his beloved island, even during his long political career. FDR never had a telephone installed in this 34-room home, even while he was serving as president. The telescope would provide fine viewing of the bay and boats. The Roosevelt family loved to sail and built many boat and airplane models. Unfortunately, I am sure this fly swatter was a necessary piece of equipment for their time on Campobello Island. The gigantic bullhorn was used by Eleanor to call her children to come home. Legend holds that her bellowing through this horn could be heard in Eastport, all the way across the bay. We entered the kitchen area to see how it would have been set up, and I'm wondering if it was always this spick and span. One other thing that I wanted to be sure to see was the intercom system. When a person would call for a staff member, an arrow would indicate the location for them to go. The restrooms were very nice and included running water. You must realize that not every home in the United States and Canada had a bathroom with running water. In many places, this was a luxury, especially at camps. The Airbnb we stayed at didn't have running water. Many camps in the Northeast still don't. We passed through the hallways and took the stairway to the bedrooms. Interestingly, FDR was highly afraid of fire and the home becoming engulfed in flames. He had strict rules about lights and fire in the evening and nighttime. He had bedchambers, that's bedpans, in each room for occupants to use and forbid them to carry a candle or lantern to visit the indoor restroom at night. However, the popular habit of smoking was not restricted. I found that rather strange. This is the bedroom where FDR was confined once he was stricken with paralysis while on Campobello Island. Eleanor needed rest, and the guide told us that she took up sleeping in the adjacent room. She and a friend of the family cared for him as FDR recovered somewhat, as he did gain strength and use of his arms and upper body. FDR decided not to retrofit the home for his paralysis, insisting that since his arms were revitalized, that soon his legs would also be restored to full health. He used a walker as much as possible and attempted to not be photographed or seen by the public in a wheelchair. He wanted to convey continued strength as his role as the President of the United States during this time in history. As you all should know, he was president during World War II. What is the thing that you remember or think of the most when you think of FDR? Tell me in the comments below. Why was FDR stricken with polio at his beloved Campobello, here where he had grown up and shared thousands of memories with his parents and his own family? How did the this happen? His strong resolve showed the character of this man as he suffered this tragic event, this life-changing event. Besides the bedrooms, we walked through the children's schoolroom. Education was a must for the Roosevelt family, even though they were there during the summertime. School continued on. The guide took us on the back porch to see an elevated view of the bay. The intense tour was winding down, and we continued back down the stairs to the main entranceway to see more photos. Once out on the front lawn, I tried to hit the croquet ball. Between my lack of skill and the fact that it had been decades since I played croquet, and the grass being thick, I did a lousy job. Have you ever played croquet? Are you any good at it? I don't think I was ever any good at it. Tell me in the comments below. We continued along the path to find what else was in store. There was an ice house, not original but interesting. And along this path we read signs that filled in the history of the FDR's parents and their time when camps and hotels covered this prime summer vacation locale for the wealthy. At the Monarch Garden we read about the James and Sarah Roosevelt summer home and how the family visited Campobello with their newborn son Franklin, beginning in June of 1883. They had purchased a 4-acre parcel and completed their cottage in 1885. Close to the amenities provided by the resort and the beautiful Bay of Fundy, FDR cultivated his love of sailing and spent many of his boyhood summers here. The cottage provided glorious views of Friars Bay and easy access to the hotel dock where sailing trips would begin. Franklin's future wife and future First Lady, Eleanor Roosevelt, was a guest at his cottage in 1904, a year before their wedding. As we strolled through the classy Hubbard cottage, let me share a few more notes about Campobello during its heyday. The owner of this cottage was a successful Boston insurance broker who designed his cottage and built it in 1892. The picture window is one of the main features of this stunning home, but the day we were there, a bit of restoration construction was underway and the magnificent window was boarded up to protect it. Understandable, right? This cottage is open daily for self-guided tours. Now to the beach. A nice downward stroll through the woods and wild berries embraced us as we headed to the bay. The water was so cold. After hanging out on the beach just a few minutes, we took the mowed path back up the hill to go into the visitor center. While passing the flowers, I was taken aback by these little containers. I loathe earwigs. How about you? What bug do you dislike the most? You're probably going to say spiders. Mine is earwigs. Those things wig me out. Inside the visitor center, you will find the friendly staff and a gift shop. Be sure to buy yourself a postcard. In addition, there is a small museum. It's not all about FDR, but the U.S. presidency and the relationship between Canada and the United States. Things specific to FDR included golfing memorabilia, a telegram sent by Roosevelt while in the White House, and a photograph of FDR with world leaders. If you have plenty of time, there is a calendar of special events and a daily Eleanor's tea at the Welsh-over Cottage that you might choose to attend. Back to our car, because we have a lookout and 2 lighthouses to investigate here on Campobello Island. The time is ticking away. We drove to the section of the park to walk out on this observation deck. Lots of signage continued on about the history of the island during what I call the Roosevelt era. Our next stop is to see the lighthouse at Mulholland Point. I'm watching the clock, for I want to have time in Lubeck, and there is dinner and finding our Airbnb nestled in the woods to rest for the night, and these are both an hour plus away from Lubeck. Built in 1885, the Mulholland Point Lighthouse served as a guide for the small coasters and freighters taking the shorter and more foul-weather protected route through the Lubeck Narrows. Steamships such as the Penobscot, sailing between Boston, Portland, and Eastport in the 1890s, could only travel through the Narrows when the tide was high. Otherwise, they had to steam around the eastern side of Campobello. While governor of New York and later as president, FDR often shown an interest in bridges, especially bridges between the United States and Canada. Construction of the Roosevelt Memorial Bridge began in January of 1960. Costs were shared equally between Canada and the United States. Formal opening of this bridge took place on August 13, 1962. Navigation lights on the bridge rendered the Mulholland Point Lighthouse obsolete, and the Canadian Coast Guard decommissioned the light in 1963. It is still a pretty little lighthouse, don't you think? Where is your favorite lighthouse? Do you like lighthouses? I know some people really get hung up on lighthouses. And if you are hung up on lighthouses, I suggest a visit to Maine. The lighthouse, unfortunately, is not open to the public. We did see seals feeding in the bay. Filming them was a bit difficult because of the distance. You have got to go see them for yourselves. The Roosevelt Campobello International Park is a unique example of international cooperation, and it's jointly administered, staffed, and funded by the people of both Canada and the United States. I'm looking at the time on the phone. We do have time. I want to get to the head harbor light on the northern end of Campobello. Let's do this. Following the signs marked with the lighthouse, We made it to the parking lot. We followed the trail and were sorely disappointed that access and good views of the lighthouse with its beautiful red cross was not possible. We did what we could to lean and stand tall to try to see it better, but not really what I had hoped for. We were obviously there at high tide, and at low tide there is a narrow window when the light's islet can be approached by ground from the parking area. If you do venture to the northern tip of Campobello to see the red cross painted lighthouse, try to visit at low tide. I realize that the best way to see this beauty is from a boat. Maybe another time. Those of you familiar with the Italian language may have noted that Campobello means beautiful field. Back across the Roosevelt Memorial Bridge and through customs, we're going to Lubeck and points beyond. If you are able to spend a few days in this area, there are plenty of tidal oddities, including Old Sal, the famous whirlpool, near Deer Island and Eastport. Another day, another peel of the onion. Flip-flops. On the ground. Unclassic road trip. Watch my video on Point Pelee State Park, a geologic landmark in Canada. Thank you for leaving a comment. And if you have a friend in Canada, be sure to share this video with them. And I want to thank you for subscribing. Hey, thanks, Lexi, for the cool glasses. Appreciate it, girl.